Why do we hold people accountable? Why, when people are little people, toddlers, kindergartners, why do we teach them that when they do something they shouldn't do, they have to be told to apologize or to make it up to the person they hurt? Like, say they broke somebody's toy on purpose or whatever. Why? Why do we do these things? Why do we socialize our children to learn how to work with others, play with others, be good friends, be good listeners? Why? Well, because if we don't, then they don't learn how to live within the rules of a civil society. They don't learn how to be somebody who understands how community works or friendship works or relationships of any kind work. So when somebody who's never been accountable as a child becomes an adult, well, we potentially have a problem on our hands if that adult continues to behave in ways that go contrary to our shared understanding of how people are supposed to behave. And then it gets even worse when that miserable adult commits transgressions against norms, commits crimes, perhaps, gets away with things, and doesn't get held accountable. Because then ultimately, what we've done is create a monster. And then what if said monster, unaccountably, because said monster is also quite dim and limited and has no good human qualities of which I am aware. When said monster is handed unimaginable amounts of power, how do we think that's going to play out? Do we think that's going to end well for us, especially when said monster has more power than all of us combined? We're seeing this in real time. When you're a person who's gotten away with absolutely everything wrong you've done, and man, have you done many, many wrong things for your entire life. In what universe is anybody going to tell you what to do? In what universe are you suddenly going to play by rules that you set on fire back in the 1970s? There is no universe. Right now, the universe we're living in is the one a bunch of people who, for reasons that will remain beyond my comprehension for the rest of my life, decided that the monster they wanted in charge of everything was Donald Trump. We're living in the universe those people created. And the person in control, the person remaking the rules, the person destroying all of our shared understanding of what it means to be a human being in a civil society, in that universe, none of that exists anymore. Let's dive in. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's episode of Mary Trump Live. It is wonderful to have you with me. I'm in a great mood. Actually, I am, because I'm here. So that's cool. Anyway, I'm not starting this on a great foot, though, because the markets dropped drastically today again. This comes after some grim comments from Fed Chair Jerome Powell and bad news for the tech industry. I wanted you to take a look at this report from CBS News just after the closing bell.
The closing bell rang just moments ago, the Dow down on fresh fears over tariffs as a big tech sell-off gains momentum. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map. This is brought to you by FinViz. This is showing the top 500 stocks. It is a sea of red today, fueling the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell telling the Economic Club of Chicago tariffs came in much larger than anticipated, and they will lead to higher inflation. So let's take a listen.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth. Tariffs are highly likely to generate at least a temporary rise in inflation. The inflationary effects could also be more persistent.
You don't say. Who could have seen that coming? Tariffs are higher than anticipated. Like, where have you been? Anyway, yeah, the grim comments were accurate because things are grim. Powell sees our economy as "quote unquote" a challenging scenario, which is not something you want to hear from the Fed chair. It really isn't. In all, the S&P 500 dropped more than 2.2%, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost roughly 700 points, or around 1.7%. At one point, the Dow was down below 900. The tech-heavy NASDAQ fell over 3%. According to MarketWatch, quote, major U.S. stock indices had their worst performances in almost a week, unquote. Has it been that long? My goodness. See, we are breaking new ground. The Trump regime really is doing things that we've never seen before. Yeah, not in the way Donald ever intends it, though. Although in this case, I think hyperbole is warranted. The economy is in serious trouble, and there is literally no reason to think it will get better, because there is literally no reason to think that Donald Trump will come to his senses and change course, as we've discussed many times before. Now, the drop in the market was also aided by bad news from chip maker NVIDIA. NVIDIA stock sank nearly 7% on Wednesday after the AI chip maker disclosed that it would take a $5.5 billion hit because of these absolutely astronomical and insane new semiconductor tariffs on exports to China. NVIDIA said in a regulatory filing that it was formed, the company would require a special license for export of its H20 chips. Analysts noted the move was a surprise, given a recent report from NPR that the Trump regime had backed off its plans to restrict NVIDIA's H20 chips following a dinner with CEO Jensen Huang at Mar-a-Lago. See, that's all it takes, right? You would think that's all it takes. Just give Donald $1 million here, $1 million there. Have a nice little romantic candlelit dinner with him at his favorite place in the world, Mar-a-Lago, which is hideous, by the way. Yeah, just talk about what a handsome, virile, accomplished, smart man he is, and you'll get your way, won't you? Well, apparently not always, because it's never enough. So it just goes to show you how without reason, how without method, how without any actual thought to the problem at hand is Donald's so-called decision-making when it comes to tariffs. He's going to do what he's going to do because that's what he wants to do. And, for all we know, stringing the video along, getting some perks for them was great until he or somebody else figured that screwing them over was a way for him somehow to make more money or gain more power. I don't know. As the tariff war continues, of course, tensions with China grow, as they should. Today, Hong Kong made the latest move in an escalating trade war, proving further that Donald is in, and always has been, way over his head. Take a look at Reuters' report.
Shipping goods from Hong Kong to the US just got trickier. Hong Kong Post said Wednesday it has suspended sea mail to the US and will halt airmail for goods starting April 27th due to US tariffs. In a statement, it warned that sending items to the US could mean facing exorbitant and unreasonable fees because of what they called Washington's unreasonable and bullying acts. Hong Kong Post added that it would, quote, definitely not collect any so-called tariffs on behalf of the US. It also cited the US move to end the so-called de minimis exemption, which had allowed small packages to be sent free of import duties. Document-only mail will not be affected. Hong Kong, a special administrative region of China, faces the same tariffs as the rest of the country, according to a US government notice.
Now, this latest move is in response to the Trump regime's decision to eliminate the duty-free de minimis treatment for items shipped from Hong Kong and to impose higher tariffs on goods starting on May 2nd. All of this will likely affect low-cost goods like clothing companies Shine and Temu. To understand the significance, how about this? Shine contributed an estimated $570 million to the U.S. economy in 2023. Shine was forced to make an announcement on Monday that it will soon be rolling out unspecified price adjustments starting Friday, April 25th. Budget-friendly options like these will no longer be available to American consumers. This comes on the heels of China's signaling willingness to work with the U.S. on tariffs if Donald Trump showed a little more respect towards them, which of course is beyond them. It's entirely beyond them. So if that's the criterion, then expect this literally unprovoked and inexplicable trade war to continue. And do not expect China to back down, because why should they? The problem for us here is that because United States manufacturing has fallen rather precipitously since the 70s, I think something like in the 70s, something like 30% of private sector jobs were in the manufacturing industry. And now it's below 9%, or it's like 9.7%, something like that. So we're making fewer things, first of all, but also American goods have always been more expensive because it costs more to live here. We pay people more, et cetera, et cetera. So American consumers have essentially, I think it might be overstating it to say become addicted to, but have come to count on readily available, relatively inexpensive goods from China. All of that's going to change. And I mean, I know Donald doesn't care, but who does that benefit exactly? And what is going to replace those readily available, relatively inexpensive Chinese goods for the American consumer? The question is nothing, except less readily available and much more expensive goods. When the trade war with China gets colder, tensions between the Trump regime and the state of Maine are reaching a boiling point for reasons that should fill us all with shame. This is basically the United States versus the state of Maine. Earlier today, the Trump regime filed a lawsuit against Maine, accusing the state of defying a federal effort to ban transgender athletes from participating in girls' and women's sports. This comes after several weeks of tensions between Donald and Democratic Governor Janet Mills. The dispute had previously reached a peak when Mills responded to Donald at the White House during, I believe it was a governor's meeting. I don't remember precisely. It was a bit of time ago. And when Donald brought up the subject, Mills said to Donald quite unequivocally, "We'll see you in court." Watch CBS News report on this.
The Trump administration is setting the stage for another legal showdown over its policies. This time, it's about its push to bar transgender athletes in girls' sports. Today, Attorney General Pam Bondi announced a lawsuit against the state of Maine, accusing it of violating federal law banning gender-based discrimination in sports. Let's listen to what she had to say.
If one young woman is in jeopardy, that's enough for us to be standing up here. No boy will be undressing in a girl's locker room. No boy will be walking in a woman's restroom. And no boy, when we're finished with this, will be beating young girls in sports.
That woman is so grotesque, so vile. It fills me with absolute horror and shame to know that she is the Attorney General of the United States of America. All right, little context, shall we? Transgender people in America make up less than 1% of the population. What percentage of transgender people are transgender women? I don't know. Let's assume it's about half. I don't know. Out of transgender women, how many play sports on teams? I don't know. Probably a fairly small percentage. Because what we're not talking about professional women's sports. We're talking about children playing sports in their schools as girls because that's what they are if we allowed them to be. So this isn't about somebody not getting into the Olympics or not being able to play professional sports because of I cannot speak to that. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a professional athlete. That is not the argument we're having right now. We're talking about letting girls play in sports on sports teams in school. What percentage of that extremely small, extremely vulnerable population are we talking about here? So essentially, the vast powers of the United States Department of Justice is being brought to bear to torment a bunch of children. For what? What's the lesson here? What exactly are we doing? Who exactly do we want to be in this moment? Do we want to be those people who think that is completely justified to sacrifice the happiness and well-being of a bunch of small children, young children, just at the beginning of things to make some culture war point? Do we want to be the kind of people who teach other children that that's okay? That we are so fragile and we are so insecure that the only way we can feel good in our own skin is to make other children suffer unnecessarily? Is that what we want here? Well, right now, that's what the United States Department of Justice wants, clearly. So that's who we are if we are our government. Pabadi, said Attorney General, was asked today if we can expect more of this type of retaliation toward states. And I'm sorry to play this clip for you, but here's her response.
For this, we're looking at Minnesota. We're looking at California. We're looking at many, many states, but they are the top two that should be on notice because we've been communicating with them. And just like Maine, we're not going out there. We don't want to be suing people. We want them to comply with the law. And that's what we're doing. We have given them opportunity, Maine, an opportunity over and over again. The Department of Education, HHS, they went and sat down with them in person, multiple meetings, and got nowhere. So now this is where we are because they refuse to protect young women in their state. So yes, Minnesota, California, multiple states. As far as prisons, had nothing to do with Title IX. We took away funding from Maine as well. We decided to go a different direction in our grants. Because we saw one reason they allowed a 6'1", 245 giant man who had violently, no murders, nice, but he had violently murdered his parents with a knife and the family dog, serving life in prison, and he chose to identify as a woman. So guess where he's being housed? In a female prison in Maine.
Yeah, they always do that, don't they? They find one example to stand in, the one example they think makes their point, that they use to malign entire groups of people, that they use to terrify those fragile, bigoted, ignorant people among us who just so desperately want to be terrified all the time. So I would say shame on her. But she is a fascist member of the Trump regime. She has no shame. I would say shame on those awful people who stood next to her and nodded their heads in agreement. But they don't have any shame either, because apparently they think they're just perfect. And they get to be whomever they want. It's other people who don't get to make those choices. Not in this country. So there's a pattern here. They are going to continue to push the boundaries. Why? Well, because look who's well, I was going to say in charge, but the idea that Donald is in charge of anything is a bit absurd. But look who they chose as their leader. A man who has specialized his entire life in pushing the envelope, seeing what he could get away with, pushing the envelope further, seeing what else he could get away with. And that's the world we're also living in now. So please, while I gather myself, take a second and like and share these videos on our channel, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, which would be awesome. And if you're listening to the podcast, please follow it. So as we should be aware, the Trump regime continues to target innocent Americans in more ways than one. Innocent Americans and also innocent people who are here legally. Abrego Garcia, the father and husband illegally deported by the Trump regime, is still stuck in a notorious, I should say, is still stuck in a horrific El Salvador prison, which is notorious for its many, many human rights violations and the inhumane conditions in which it keeps its prisoners. And Abrego Garcia is still there, despite the fact that a court ordered his return to the United States. A Democratic senator from Maryland, Chris Van Hollen, traveled to El Salvador because Abrego Garcia did until recently live in Maryland with his wife and children. And he went there. Van Hollen went there to press for Abrego Garcia's release, calling the deportation an illegal abduction and pledging continued advocacy to bring him home. WTVR CBS 6 has more.
This is about the rule of law. This is about due process.
Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland left for El Salvador this morning, where he hopes to speak to government officials about Kilmer Abrego Garcia, mistakenly deported last month.
We are not going to stop fighting for his return until he is actually released.
Administration attorneys say they would facilitate Abrego Garcia's return as the Supreme Court ordered, but maintain it's up to El Salvador to release him. And officials say if he is returned, he will face deportation again.
If somehow he comes back and that happens, he's going to be detained and removed again.
The administration continues to say Abrego Garcia is an MS-13 gang member based on allegations from a confidential informant. His attorney and family dispute it.
Our family is torn apart during this scary time, and our children miss their dad so much.
Other than that anonymous tip, there is no evidence that Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13. He has no criminal record. Since he's been in this country, he has done everything he needed to do to remain here legally. The Trump regime admitted in court that Abrego Garcia was illegally deported due to a clerical error, but in recent days it has reversed course and denied that it was a mistake at all. In fact, they have started calling him a terrorist without any evidence whatsoever, and missing the irony that the only terrorists are the people in the Trump regime. El Salvador is holding Abrego Garcia in Seco, which is a high security prison for terrorists, which is just probably not a great place for him to be, considering he is from El Salvador and he left El Salvador because he believed his life was in danger. And a judge years ago said that under no circumstances should Abrego Garcia be returned to El Salvador because he would almost certainly face torture and death. One can only imagine the kind of time he is having in that prison. Once Van Hollen arrived in the country, the El Salvador government refused his request to visit or speak to his constituent. Van Hollen met then with the Vice President of El Salvador, and afterwards he spoke to the press. Play the clip.
So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime, and the U.S. courts have found that he was illegally taken for the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CCOT? And his answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT.
Got that? I mean, we knew that already. We knew that El Salvadoran President Bukele, who is awful and refers to himself as the world's coolest dictator, has been paid at least $6 million so far. So this isn't about doing the right thing. This isn't even about pretending that you're doing the right thing. This is about money, which shouldn't surprise us because Donald Trump is involved. Of course, rather than simply complying with court orders, Donald and his minions have been attacking Van Hollen, calling him a complete disgrace for advocating for the man's return. A committee of U.S. House members now plans to follow in Van Hollen's footsteps and will be going to El Salvador soon to see or try to see Abrego Garcia. These include Representatives Robert Garcia, Democrat of California, Maxwell Frost, Rep. Garcia and Rep. Frost, the Democrat of Florida, asked the House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, to authorize the delegation. Dozens of lawmakers have expressed interest in attending or going on this trip. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, of course, trashed the Democrats' efforts to ensure that Abrego Garcia is okay. Again, I apologize, but here she is at today's press conference.
Today, we have officially learned Democrat officials still refuse to accept the will of the American people. Maryland Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen rushed to Dulles Airport this morning to fly to El Salvador, potentially using taxpayer dollars, to demand the release of deported, illegal, alien MS-13 terrorists. The Democrats and the media in this room have continually and wrongly labeled Kilmar Abrego Garcia as a Maryland father. There is no Maryland father. Let me reiterate. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is an illegal alien, MS-13 gang member, and foreign terrorist. And if he ever ends up back in the United States, he would immediately be deported again. Nothing will change the fact that Abrego Garcia will never be a Maryland father. He will never live in the United States of America again.
Yeah, very possibly because he's no longer alive. Because of these murderers who are now running our government. A couple of quick things. First of all, it's democratic when it's an adjective. Otherwise, you sound like the idiot you are. Secondly, none of what you said is true about this man. He's not a member of a gang. He has committed no crimes. He's certainly not a terrorist. He has every right to be in this country, and even your own regime admitted it. But you are such a practiced liar. You are so full of hate. You have absolutely no trouble saying these things, telling these lies to the American people for what I can't even begin to comprehend, because thank God I'm not you. White House incompetence does not stop at immigration. It's making its way through the Pentagon, which, oh my God, with Pete Hegseth in charge, how could that possibly be the case? Colin Carroll is chief of staff to Deputy Defense Secretary Steve Feinberg, and he's been placed on administrative leave, which is he's a third Trump Pentagon appointee sidelined this week. According to CNN, defense sources say Carroll was escorted from the building in what they describe as a purge of officials who clashed with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's controversial chief of staff, Joe Casper. The shakeup follows the administrative leave of Dan Caldwell and Darlene Selnick, two of Hegseth's senior advisors. Caldwell is under investigation for an alleged unauthorized disclosure. Casper ordered a broad leak investigation on March 21st, including polygraph tests and referral for criminal prosecution if warranted. So it sounds like the Pentagon can conduct an investigation, right? But just not for Hegseth, because I'm sure he's never done anything wrong. This turmoil comes just weeks after Hegseth himself came under fire for sharing highly classified strike details in a Signal group chat, an unsecured Signal group chat that accidentally included a journalist. One defense official called the breach wholly irresponsible, adding, quote, "My most junior analysts know not to do this," unquote. Yes, and any junior analyst would have been fired and decommissioned. Anybody in any normal administration would have lost their jobs or been forced to resign. Every single one of them. And yet, Pete Hegseth, who was the genius behind that debacle, is still Secretary of Defense. Just a quick programming note. We did a video today about the whistleblower, the Doge whistleblower that you might want to check out. I think it helps give context to what is it already a serious problem and an increasingly serious one, given the unfettered access Elon Musk and his minions at Doge have to Americans' most sensitive financial data. Also, there is going to be another 50-51 protest on Saturday. I'll remind you guys at the end as well, but probably it's a good thing that we have reached our emotional support moment because, wow. Anyway, do you guys like birds? I do. I love birds. I'm not a bird watcher per se, but I'm sure some of you are. I mean, I am in the sense that when I see a bird, I watch it. I just don't hang out with binoculars. So, stressful times. Birds can be very relaxing. Birds in flight. It's like one of the most spectacular things. So I want to take a look. There's something called a smart feeder bird camera. And I think it gives us it gives us access to birds in a way I don't think we've seen before. So I want you all to take a look at this, and I hope you enjoy it.
It's a caught-on-camera reality show thrilling a new generation of bird watchers, so-called smart feeders. With cameras connected to your phone, offering a front-row seat, an up-close and personal window into a world we don't always see.
As soon as the smart feeder connected to my phone and I was getting those notifications that a painted bunting or an eastern bluebird would land on my feeder, it just was such joy.
Melissa started sharing her videos online. The app's even giving stats on the types of birds and recognizing repeat visitors, like Melissa's favorite, the painted bunting. Jennifer honoring her loved ones with names like Dennis for this cardinal, and that eastern bluebird, that's Penny.
As long as the birds are coming to my feeder, something good is happening in the environment around me, and I want to contribute to that.
Yeah. Full confession, my favorite backyard bird, the cardinal. They mate. They're monogamous, and they often come to the same place. When I lived, I don't want to say where because I'm embarrassed. When I lived in the suburbs, we had a couple of pairs of cardinals, and it was awesome, and they're beautiful. So, if I still lived there, I would get that camera for sure because that was really cool. Hope you all enjoyed that as well. Okay. Sorry. Let me drink some water. All right, let's get to your questions and comments. Suki56. Thank you so much, Suki56, as always. Question. Greetings, Mary. If the administration is found guilty of contempt, Who in a min goes to jail? Just asking. $10,000 per day is not enough. I say Bondi or Musk goes to jail. Jess, don't. I mean, Musk has nothing to do with this, so I think that's highly unlikely. If I were one of those DOJ attorneys representing the government, I would be worried. Honestly, I would really be worried because again, sadly, this is going to take a while to suss out who knew what when and who's responsible. Like, how do you get to Donald there? But I find it a layperson, but knowing what we know about how judges can be and how they do not like to be spoken to in certain ways. They do not like it when lawyers show up unprepared. They certainly don't like it when lawyers treat them with contempt and disrespect. I'm actually quite shocked that none of these attorneys has been sanctioned yet. Shocked and horrified. Like, how much leeway do these people get time and time and time again? So, yeah, I think those are the people who should be most worried. But we saw what happened with an attorney last week who actually, an attorney for the DOJ, who showed up to court and actually said to the judge, my client is not complying. My client is not providing me with the information I need in order to represent this case properly. That was a lawyer for the DOJ talking about the DOJ, the executive branch, and he got fired because he was just trying to do a good job, and his supervisor got suspended. Yeah. So, they're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and they have now in court a bunch of lawyers who are all in on the fascism of the Trump regime, and maybe they just don't care. Maybe they just don't care what the judge may or may not do. And that is where we're going to find out where we really are on this treacherous road in which it seems that there's only one branch of government anymore. Donna, wow, Donna, that's so kind of you. Thank you very, very much. All right, so we've got a comment. Good evening, Mary. I just wanted to share that ISIS arrived in New Bedford, Massachusetts. They were filmed trying to apprehend a gentleman dropping his child at school. How dare he? When he would not get out of his car, they started breaking his windshield with an axe. How barbaric. Yes, indeed. They are barbaric. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to the new Gestapo. Just me. Thank you so much. As always, just me from Australia. Comment, late fee. Linda had to put the coffee on. Morning here. Yeah, it's early over there. And again, thank you so much for the fictional late fee. Completely appreciated. Also unnecessary, but thank you again. Victoria, thank you so much, Victoria. Comment, you saved me $1,000 in therapy costs so far. Fee, you're the best, courage, intelligent, compassion. Thank you so much. That's very kind of you. That's a lot of money to save on therapy. This is just full disclosure, though. This is not a stand-in for therapy. I'm not at all recommending that. I need therapy. This is therapeutic, but it's not therapy. Or at least sometimes it's therapeutic. It is not always. I understand that. But I'm glad it's helping at least a little. Dodie, thank you as always, Dodie. Comment, Holman is horrible and evil, maybe the worst. He is a Nazi to the core. That guy, wow. That is the guy at the concentration camp making the selection. And he's such a thug, and he's obviously deeply, deeply unintelligent thug whose arrogance is just, arrogance is unacceptable under any circumstances, but when somebody is that grotesque and unaccomplished and unworthy, arrogance feels worse somehow. Loves my dogs a lot. Thank you so very much for that, as always. Comment. Note to Bondi. We want Donald and his regime to follow the law. The hypocrisy of Donald and his crew boggles my mind. I guess they haven't heard the axiom, what is good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm guessing they have not, because they don't think anything applies to them. And again, in Donald's case, why should he? Why should he? And that is one of the most infuriating things. Because it's not only that he hasn't gotten held accountable, it's that I've never seen anybody fail up so spectacularly at every step of the way. I've never seen one person whom so many other people thought deserved more. It is just mind-boggling to me. Sorry. One of those days. Rockin' steady. Thank you as always. Question. Can we send the gopher from Caddyshack to Donald's golf course in Mar-a-Lago? Yes. Where is that gopher? In fact, we need more than one. We need like a plethora, a superabundance, a legion, if you will. Like instead of orcs, gophers. One cuter, so much cuter, right? Because after they're done destroying the golf course at Mar-a-Lago and everything else, like chewing through all the wires, right? Doing all sorts of stuff I don't want to know about in the kitchens, right? We can hang out with them because they're adorable. That's what the fees are going towards. Building the gopher army. Michelle G 2112. Thank you so much, Michelle. That's great comment. Thank you for your insight. You're very welcome. We love doing this, even on tough days, honestly. Sometimes, especially on tough days. In the middle of nowhere, thank you as always for that. Fantastic. Comment. A reporter asked Donald about Mr. Garcia. He said the reporter should be thanking him for removing criminals. I wish she had said, you're still here. So do I. And also, by the way, reporters are there to ask difficult questions, not thank anybody for anything. But again, I mean, reporters aren't there to say those kinds of things either. In all fairness, like that's not her job, but it's our job. So yeah, Donald, I mean, if we're getting rid of criminals, the line starts behind you. You adjudicated rapist and felon convicted on 34 criminal counts. You traitor. You stealer of highly sensitive classified documents that were the property of the people of the United States of America. Yeah, you. Murderer. Eska, thank you so very much for that comment. Stay strong, friends. Yeah, thank you. We all need that. We all need to hear that because that's what we need to do. We need to stay strong and we need to remember that we're friends. We're all on the same side of this. We're all in this together. So thank you very much. There you go again. Just saying, 77. Thank you. You're part of my morning routine in Australia. Thank you. But waking up to more horrors is disturbing, especially the actions of ICE. Keep up the good fight. Yeah, it's all pretty disturbing. Partially because it's relentless and it does feel unstoppable. You know. So yeah. But we're happy to be part of your morning routine. Very cool. Foresee Riley 1, thank you very much for that question. Do you think he's a sociopath? If by mean you mean you mean Donald, I don't diagnose him. I mean, I could, but I mean, technically I couldn't. And honestly, it's not relevant anymore. It just doesn't matter anymore. You know, he look at what he's doing. Right. I don't even care what his motives are anymore. I mean, I think, I know what they are. So I know that other people find out of interest, and I think it is important to know as much as we can about our enemies. But it's also more, in the thick of things, to focus on what they're doing, and we see how it's all playing out. All right, so a couple more people. Lorianne, thank you so very much. It's very, very kind of you. And Larry, Jack, Lisa, wow, guys, thank you so much. That's really generous, and we so appreciate that as well. Okay, that does it for us tonight. Thanks for hanging in there with me. It was tough. Sometimes it is tougher than I want it to be. And I know the same is true for all of you. So thanks for everybody watching on YouTube, everybody live streaming on Twitter and over at my Substack, and of course, everybody listening to the podcast. We really appreciate that as well. To all of the super stickers, everybody giving us gifts. We appreciate it more than we can say. It helps us tremendously stay in this fight, which we are determined to do as long as necessary. Also, I want to thank all of our moderators, but in particular tonight, we have on duty doing the hard work, Susan, Deb, and Mark. You guys rock. So thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, we couldn't do this without you, because, you make this a place people want to be. And that means a lot to us. And of course, to my spectacular team, which honestly, I wish I could convey to you just how hard it is for them to stay in this every single day and, just get a handle on everything that's happening, make sense of everything that's happening, be organized about it. And much, much more importantly to me, be so smart and so empathetic and maintain their sense of equanimity and their sense of humor in these quite unimaginable times. So thanks, guys. As always, it is my honor. Okay. I will be back. I don't know. Today's Wednesday. Probably note for those of you who don't know, there's no Thursday Nerds anymore. Nerds are the Nerd Avengers are on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. For now. So the next time I'll see you is tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern. That's Mary Trump Live every weeknight, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget, we have videos dropping every single day, at least 2. So the best way to keep up on that, and also one of the easiest ways to support us, is just subscribe to the channel. And then after you subscribe, click on the bell icon, because then you'll be alerted every time new videos drop, which is cool. Also, it helps us tremendously if you like and share our videos. And if they're recorded videos, it also helps us a lot if you leave comments on the videos, which we'd love to get from you. And yeah, that does it for us tonight. I will see you all tomorrow again at 6 p.m. Eastern. In the meantime, seriously, especially in these times, everybody, please, please, please stay safe and be kind. Bye.